I'm Hilary Hahn, and I am here with...
Gregory Raden.
And what do you do?
I play clarinet in the Dallas Symphony. I'm the principal clarinettist of the Dallas Symphony, and I've been there 14 seasons.
Wow.
Hard to believe, yes. Time flies.
Were you ever a not principal clarinet in an orchestra?
I was for a short time, about a year, and I enjoyed it, but missed the principal role.
What's the difference then, playing principal versus in the section?
I would say there's certainly skill involved in all the different positions. In the principal role, you go between being a solo role and really having to have a strong point of view to really express yourself and say something in a solo passage, and then knowing when to go back into the texture and be more part of the ensemble. And I sort of enjoy that, you know, knowing when you're really the primary voice and when you're a supporting secondary voice, and when maybe you're a soli passage where it might be, you know, solo with the first flute or the first oboe and bassoon, and trying to make just a beautiful blending sound. That's something that's kind of a unique pleasure of being a principal wind player.
As a string player, when I play in a chamber group, I'm either working with other strings or with piano, and sometimes I get to work with winds, and very occasionally with brass, but usually it's my group of instruments or something completely different. And in a wind section, you have things that are kind of similar maybe in texture, but not really. So how do you, because clarinet and flute sound very different.
Very different.
So for example,
yes.
that, or, you know, trumpet is playing at the same time, or like trombone or tuba, and how do you match tone with things like that? Is it technical, like articulation things?
Well,
Is it
I would
like
say
the edge of your sound? Or
it's
what?
a lot of things, and I think that's one of the challenges. You know, even though, for example, like you said, the flute is considered a woodwind instrument. Of course,
Right.
it's made of metal,
Right.
and the clarinet is wood with some metal, but the timbre is quite different, and the tendencies of the instrument are very opposite.
Like flute will go more sharp, and
Flute, when the flute gets louder, the tendency is for it to go up in pitch, to go sharp, and to go flat when it gets soft, and the clarinet has the exact opposite tendencies.
Oh, that's so tricky.
And so, you know, that's just one of those differences. And the timbre of, you know, say the oboe and the clarinet, or instruments that vibrate.
Right.
Like, well, basically clarinet is
They all are
probably the
vibrating
only
air,
one.
but...
Well, yeah, but that doesn't normally play with vibrato.
Oh,
So,
I see what you mean.
Yeah. So learning, you know,
Oh.
to blend and of course, you know, very experienced flutists and oboists know, you know, to alter their vibrato when playing with the clarinet, so we get more of that kind of blend. But that's one of the interesting challenges.
And each ensemble in each orchestra would be a different set of adaptations.
Totally different, yeah.
It seems really challenging, but I guess when you're in a place for a while, you find your ensemble.
We sort of have our groove going here in the Dallas Symphony, yeah.
So you guys are on tour now in Europe and finishing up tonight.
That's right.
What is it like on tour versus at home for concert preparation, rehearsal time? Like, what are the differences? Because it's still the same people.
It's the same people, sure, but
different halls.
Different halls, which is always a challenge. You're suddenly, you know, hearing things very differently in a different acoustic. You're positioned maybe differently on stage. There's less room. There's more room. Things that, you know, suddenly just you're out of your comfort zone, and that can, you know, present challenges. Of course, you deal with this all the time as a soloist, rarely being in the same place.
But it's not with the same people for me usually.
Right.
So
that's true.
That's different.
That's different, but I think it makes you more flexible. You know, I think it's you know, it has to, and I think that's a good thing. The other challenge, of course, is, you know, traveling is tiring, and as you know better probably than anyone, but you know, orchestras don't do that all the time, so that's a unique challenge. Just learning sort of how to manage your time and your sleep and what you eat and when you eat, and which you have your routine when you're in your home base, and of course usually travel with a few programs, so you know the repertoire well, so that's comforting in a way, but again. I just think the big thing is being sort of out of your comfort zone in a way, and so surprises happen. But
Right.
I think there's also a new excitement too. Doing pieces that you've done a lot, but they feel fresh, or they feel different anyway. And we hope that it's fresh and some magic happens.
Right.
In a new environment.
This is probably a difficult question to answer because it's general and each person is so individual, but with violin, for example, when you start to get tired, like if you're physically tired and you're trying to play and you're tired in a different way, you're jet lagged or you're you've been traveling all day, it just feels like the coordination is a little funny. Like things aren't responding quite as quickly.
Absolutely.
So you have to make mental adaptations to get around it. With a wind instrument, particularly a clarinet, at least with your experience, what do you find? Because you have to warm up a whole different set of muscles, and it's a different body relationship when you're working with wind as opposed to motion. So what is it for you that you find is tricky?
Well, I think there's some similarities, with just dexterity and just physical sort of comfort. But in terms of the breathing apparatus and things, I think
I would imagine I would have less breath if I were tired.
Yeah, I think it's important.
I don't want to breathe all the way.
Well, I have to sort of sometimes remind myself to breathe. I mean, which sounds silly. I mean, of course, we're breathing to stay alive, but I mean,
Right.
to make sure that I'm taking relaxed inhalations and that they're relaxed and that they're deep, they're low. Sometimes I catch myself when I'm tired or not quite focused, breathing shallow. And so if I just take a second and just make sure it's relaxed and slowing down the breathing a little bit, like taking a slower, longer breath consciously, just that process sometimes will kind of ground me a little bit. That's one thing that seems to help.
I could actually use that technique.
No, I think
myself,
actually everybody can. It's soothing.
It reminds your body where it is, like where it is in like the cycle
Yeah,
of
I think so.
breathing and circulation and all of
Yeah,
that.
and just somehow slowing yourself down and just the process of taking that air in slowly and releasing it slowly has a calming effect.
We were at school together a long
We
time
were,
ago.
yes.
And when you were at school, were there things you didn't expect about working in music that have surprised you? I mean, I assume you've had a career in chamber music and orchestra and done some solo stuff. I'm sure there have been things along the way about like how you work with people or working environments and stuff that you've just had to learn how to deal with. Not in like a
Sure.
negative sense, but just stuff that, is there anything like
well,
that?
I
that
mean,
comes
I
to
would say
mind?
they're positive and negative things,
Yeah.
like anything. I would say one thing that does come to mind is, of course, being trained at Curtis is a very specific style and kind of training. I think particularly in the wind playing, there's just a very strong tradition of a really a real school
Right.
of wind playing.
Right.
I think in the strings it might be a little bit more varied, but in the winds it goes back to Marcel Tabito and this very old tradition that he started and has really hung on for many years. I think I noticed that going out into the world, I could sit down with a player who was trained in that tradition, even though I wasn't at school with them at the same time, and there was a very common language. It was very easy to play with them. Not that it's hard to play with someone who wasn't
No,
trained.
but you just have
it
the
was
same
we were
background.
simpatico, you know, and maybe working with players who were trained differently. There are just some differences that you know you have to adapt to. You know, whether it's just articulation differences or some phrasing or sound concepts. And you know, it's not good or bad. It's just
Right.
what makes life interesting, I think.
And my last question is, what do you enjoy most about working in music? Or playing music?
Well, that's a good question. I would say I think I enjoy those moments, those magic moments that happen. And of course they don't happen every time we sit down and play. But when they do happen, you know, it's so fulfilling, and it's you know, that's the fix, that's the high I need. You know,
That's what we're
just
playing
keeps me,
for.
yeah, that's exactly right. And I mean, of course I still enjoy, you know, many of the times that I sit down and play and perform, but there are those special moments where, you know, your whole body tingles, and you know, it's euphoric or otherworldly, and you know, that's why we do it. And I think also when you're able to connect with, whether it's one person or 20 or 2,000, who can somehow feel what you were feeling when you're playing that music, or feel it on some level, that's so powerful. And I think, you know, that's the power of music.
Yeah, it's something that you can really connect, as you were saying, connect with people through and really just be in that moment. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Hilary.
Bye.
Bye.